Been hit with some devastating news. According to ChatGPT, marijuana is still illegal in much of the United States.
What?
Yes, that's right.
Hey, Marsh, are you gonna buy any coffee or what?
Don't need coffee, thanks though, Richard. So how will we deal with this current crisis? Our AI informs us that the only way to change these laws is by changing the classification of marijuana at the federal level. I believe our best course of action is to send one of our employees to Washington to explain our tech and ask for these regulations to change.
That's right. Towley, one of the weirdest South Park characters of all time, is now part of the marijuana rescheduling conversation. And we are going to be a part of that conversation today as well on episode 2 of A Better Buzz. Dave and Lee back with you. I'm a longtime cable news anchor and VP of Business Development in the THC beverage industry. Lee's a former VP of Sales in the industry as well, and an educator through her certification program. What did you make, Lee, of South Park diving in to the rescheduling conversation? Media usually does a poor job at characterizing marijuana, but the South Park guys, they seem to get it.
Oh my gosh, I freaking love South Park, and so I appreciate anything that they do, and I love it. And the fact that, of course, they bring up AI and that everything is essentially generated from that is just only appropriate that be part of the conversation as well.
And the South Park creators, Trey Parker, Matt Stone, they are University of Colorado grads like myself. South Park is a Colorado town. I am in Colorado on vacation, and I think it's perfect that I'm here and you're in Texas as we begin to unpack the quagmire that is the legal framework surrounding hemp THC beverages and how confusing it is state to state, online versus in-store versus on-prem. We're going to try to unpack it for you as best we can. We're also going to talk about the categories that are available to you. And we're going to tell our funny THC stories that you can reflect on and hopefully you can relate with. And we want to hear your stories. Also, next week, we're going to start inviting brands into the show. So please, if you want to reach out, I'm on LinkedIn. Lee is on LinkedIn. You can find me on Instagram, Dave Briggs TV. How else should people find you?
Oh, I'm on Instagram and, of course, YouTube. Hit me up in the comments. I'm always going to respond. So LinkedIn at Lee Gall, and then Enlightened Buzz on Instagram and, of course, YouTube.
Perfect. Let's dive into the strange legal framework around these drinks. Again, I'm in Colorado, the first state in the country to legalize recreational marijuana use way back in 2012. And yet here we are in 2025, and I figured, I'm going to head out to the liquor store and I'm going to buy some THC drinks so we have something to discuss. I went to 7 liquor stores. The only one I found was a 50 milligram CBD drink, no THC. It's made by Wild. And by the way, they make amazing gummies, by the way, if you're in the market. So I figured, all right, I'm going to go to a dispensary, Lee, where they had 100 milligram Keef. Keef is one of the OGs in the industry. They make some like sodas, soft drinks, colas. They also have 10 milligrams single serves. That thing is enough to knock me out for weeks. They do have at Applejack Liquors 1 milligram THC beverages with a 15-to-1 CBD ratio, which to me is essentially NyQuil. Colorado, a baffling state. Why that is? It's because the marijuana lobby is very influential here, and they don't want these beverages to start selling in the liquor stores because they fear it would crush their business. What's happening in Texas, and what did you find when you went out to the liquor store?
What is not happening in Texas, Dave? I find myself in such a predicament being in cannabis and also a Texas resident. So don't think I haven't called up my representatives and made some phone calls for some action. Yeah, it's crazy. And I think it's also just important to know that it does vary state by state. I know we'll get into it more in a little bit, but there are federal laws and then there's the state laws, and not everybody's doing the same thing, and it's all over the place. And currently the state of Texas is that there is no regulation. There are no laws currently in existence around hemp products. And as such, there has been a big flood in, CBD stores and available products from edibles to smokables and flour and drinks, all of course, deriving from the hemp plant. And then more recently, there was a ban and then there was a veto, and we'll get into that. But in preparation for this call, I, of course, wanted to go and see kind of what was available. What could I get my hands on? How could I compete with you in Colorado? I knew there was one store in particular that had some higher dosage stuff. And as I pull up into the parking lot, I hadn't been there in a while, I start to notice that they have some new neons. And there was this like psychedelic mushroom neon in the window of this liquor store. And I walk towards the door and there's this another neon that's like vape zone. It's like, okay. So I look to the clerk behind the counter. I'm like, where are your beverages? Because immediately I see a swarm of smokables and edibles. Like, where are your beverages? And he, points. So I head on over and immediately eye level. There's that 50. I knew I was coming in. Check box. There it is.
Did you get one?
What I got was 200.
Holy shit.
Wait,
that's in a liquor store.
In a liquor store. And I picked this up, I don't know, about 30 minutes ago. This is a liquor store that's right outside my gym where I play pickleball.
Yeah.
I asked the guy, I go, is this really 200 milligrams of THC? And he said, yes, you're supposed to drink it in doses, which I did notice that they had taken the time. You might not be able to see it. They put little lines on the bottle.
Right.
So he goes, oh, I have one open. Would you like to try it? And I was like, oh, hell no. Like, I don't even want to sip because I'm so low tolerance. I don't even.
That is such a fucking bad idea. I cannot believe he said that to you.
So 200 milligrams right down the street. We had several 200 milligram brands, wow. 60s, 50s. Kind of the norm, the medium was 25.
That's a problem. It's a real problem with the industry because you couldn't go in and buy a high noon that would knock you out for 6 days. We need some uniformity. We need some regulations. I will say, and that what you got is stronger than I could buy at the dispensary in Colorado, which is a really problematic situation. Not to knock that brand. I get it. They're a business and they should be allowed to sell whatever they want. Now, this one, Keith, I like that they basically have a shot glass, if you will, a dosage capsule that comes in the lid so you don't go overboard. I'm just going to give it a shot and pour it right in my seltzer there. And the flavor is actually pretty good. So that represents a huge problem. And what we need is some certainty in this environment. And just to give you an overall, what we have is 24 states where you can essentially buy anything, and clearly Texas is one of those. We have 11 states where you can buy nothing, and then there are 15 states that are kind of in the middle somewhere, like Colorado, where you can buy 1 to 15. But Lee, what I found interesting, I got on 10 websites to order drinks to my home here in Colorado, and 2 of the 10 would allow me to buy anything, which they're not supposed to do by law. That is illegal. 8 of them were restricted by my location that did not allow shipping to Colorado. But if you want to order them to your door, I'm not encouraging illegal behavior, but keep looking. There are some well-known and very good companies that do allow these drinks to be shipped anywhere despite the regulations.
Yeah, it's because I think it addresses such a bigger issue in that the brands are still sending product to states where there is a ban on hemp because nobody's checking. And that's because they don't understand that they're just putting more work on law enforcement to go out and check. And there's not a lot of bandwidth for our governmental bodies and these state, groups to be checking all of this stuff.
The industry needs to be regulated right now. It's the wild, wild west. The state of Texas, they estimate it's a $5.5 billion industry already, just a couple of years old now. That's an industry analysis, so it's probably favorable, but it's somewhere in that neck of the woods. This is a massive industry. I will get back to the South Park conversation. I do think rescheduling from Schedule 1, where marijuana is today, in line with heroin and cocaine and rescheduling it to Schedule 3, where it belongs in a category with Tylenol, with codeine. I do believe the Trump administration will do that because it's a massive economic boost to this country, because those companies can use traditional banking. They can write off business expenses. I think it's great news for the THC beverage industry, because then, of course, no way they're going to close the 2018 Farm Bill loophole and eliminate these products entirely if, in fact, marijuana is a Schedule 3 drug. So I think that is real progress if, in fact, it happens, and I do believe it will. What is, though, the battle happening in Texas right now? Will they get banned, or will they allow it to thrive?
Originally, there was a bill that was proposed to ban. I mean, there has been all kinds of bills introduced in both the House and the Senate to create terms and legal regulation around this. But then the one that they went through with back in June was that a bill passed to do an outright ban on THC. The only cannabinoids that would be allowed in the state would be CBD and CBG. And in the very last second, the governor vetoed that ban. So essentially, he came out and said, we need regulation. We don't need a ban. A special session was then created, and we are right back where we started. And another bill from the Senate has been introduced to once again ban all the cannabinoids other than CBD and CBG. It's going to get kicked over to the House, but we are right back where we started. So we're in limbo. There is not necessarily a ban or a veto happening at this current moment. But our lieutenant governor has been very vocal against THC and, unfortunately, the thriving industry that it represents within Texas. And we're just going to see this all play out again.
I think ultimately what you're seeing in states is, once they see that they can tax it, once they figure out how much tax revenue it's generating and they figure out how to tax it. For example, in Connecticut, that's what they did. They had a massive tax on THC drinks that we thought would cripple the industry, but the liquor stores were still saying, hey, hang on, our margins are still massive on these drinks, even with the huge tax. So I think once states realize the economic benefit, once they slap an additional tax that's in some cases much larger than alcohol or beer, they come along and realize there are very few industries besides AI that are growing. So again, 24 states, no regulations, 11 with none, and 15 have some sort of mix or some sort of gray area in terms of the dosage that they allow. So let's jump into the categories now. And I think you could say there are somewhere between 5 and 10. And I asked some industry experts how many products exist. And these are the best of the best, the people that make these drinks. They say, I don't know, because there's a new drink almost every day. So their estimate, they basically said there are currently hundreds of drinks. There were only 65 in 2023. There are now hundreds. And so let's jump into the biggest of them, seltzers. Easily, by far, the biggest.
Oh, absolutely. Dave, I was just showing my can. This is what I'm drinking today, but in true...
What's the brand?
It's called Mosey.
I don't know it. See, I mean, that's the thing. I see a new one every single day.
So I picked this up on my Total Wine trip. Full disclosure, I will not be drinking this. I probably won't even open this.
We'd have a great show if you drank that. We'd have a really interesting show.
Well, even just drinking a capful, I think, would be entertaining.
I think we should have a show where both of us just see what happens with would have to have our kids, we can't take care of our kids that night. But if we go 30 milligrams or something deep, it'd be interesting to just find out what happens so we can speak to the experience that what happens when a kid gets a hold of these drinks, but not today. Seltzers is the oldest category and easily the biggest and the one that's expanding the fastest. You have one there.
Yeah, I was going to share that, because speaking of dosing, or I know some people are not a fan of the word dosing, so we'll see if we can integrate some new language. But I have a very low tolerance, and so this is a situation where I poured this out. I put it in a measuring cup, and I have essentially 5 milligrams in my glass, which because I
Everyone
like.
in Texas is so proud of Texas.
Yeah.
You always have the state, like no other state does that. You do know that, right?
Oh yeah, no, I know we're cuckoo.
So
So
funny.
yeah, I mean, people have found a way to capitalize on, just throw a Texas
Oh
shape
my
in it.
God, so much
For
pride.
people that like Portlandia, just put a bird on it. Seltzer, and frankly, I think what we're going to see is that some of the brands that identified early on as a seltzer are probably going to see some rebranding opportunities, because that category is becoming so saturated that retailers are like, I don't want another seltzer. I already
Yeah.
have, 17. And also the term doesn't necessarily distinguish everything, because you have true seltzers that taste like carbonated water and have just effervescent flavoring. And then you have some in this case that are using real fruit juice. And I would say this
Right.
is a little bit more than a seltzer. And so I think we're going to see some rebranding opportunities as people find a more distinct lane to classify themselves.
Yeah, a couple of brands I think have done a real nice job with the branding. I would say Nowadays has a really clean brand, really strong in-store displays online. Really nice job. I think Wink has done a really nice job in terms of branding and marketing. And across the board, you understand it. There's a 2.5, there's a 5. Look, there are hundreds, and I agree with you. We're going to see new categories expand. There are teas, there are lemonades, and there are soft drinks as well that kind of also splintered off from seltzers.
Oh, absolutely. I think first and foremost, seltzer is the majority share, but right behind it, I believe that the soda, the soft drink segment has really taken a stronghold. But honestly, it's actually John Halper that I first remember him using the term full flavor, and kind of distinguishing anything that maybe has more sugar, more calories, because you can have a full flavor tea, a full flavor punch, a full flavor lemonade. But I know that those are doing very well in terms of orange soda, cola, root beers, full flavored
They
teas.
have tons of sugar. I will just say, watch the can, read the can, because I was blown away at some of the new entrants, how much sugar these soft drinks have. If that's something you're worried about, keep an eye on it. Some lemonades, some teas are very good. Bolt is one of the first companies that existed as a THC drink. Very nice tasting teas. Boston Beer Company, the maker of Sam Adams, they make what's called Teapot. It's only available in Canada. I do believe it'll come here to the United States in a matter of time. The only real big cannabis player in the industry that I'm aware of, Lee, is Curaleaf. Maybe you're aware of someone else. Curaleaf has gotten into the seltzer game. I haven't seen them at retail. I understand they are coming to Total Wine, but they're the only MSO multi-state operator that I'm aware of that makes its own THC hemp drink. I haven't tried them yet.
I do know there, just if we're talking about like the integration from cannabis into kind of the traditional alcohol beverage space, of course you have Curaleaf, but then you have, Wana, you have Sweet Justice. I know there's so many more that would be obvious right off the top of my head, but I can't think of them. But you're definitely seeing the integration into the space. I did try Wana. I picked that up at Total Wine. It was really delightful. There was a nice mix of some minor cannabinoids, and I remember having a very pleasant experience after having one of those. So it is exciting to see that integration, because they bring a lot of knowledge about the cannabinoids and the other functional benefits.
Yeah, I think Wana's gummies are terrific. And those other cannabinoids I think are really nice as far as the impact. We both recommend you try 4 or 5 different brands. They all hit different. They all taste different. They all say they have the same time, but that's not true. I have found almost every beverage hits me different. So I recommend you try 5 or 6 before you make your mind up. So we talked about lemonades, teas, soft drinks, seltzers. I would say the next biggest category that I see exploding is shots. and they are about this big, and they tend to be 5 or 10 milligrams. They are flying off the shelves. And I think we saw the same thing. The best-selling spirit category as far as alcohol goes is nips, those tiny little bottles that fit in your fist. Unfortunately, they have become a landfill nightmare, but that's the fastest growing that I've seen in stores, because people can just get a quick 5 milligrams, which scares me a little bit,
Or
but they are
Dave,
very convenient.
or a quick 25 milligrams. At the point that I got to the register to buy this bad boy, I immediately looked to my left where all the little impulse purchases are, and the shots of this were available, and they had 25 milligrams at the register. So they're not always low dose. Again, a very tiny serving with 25 milligrams. But I do agree that that is a very large booming segment within the category. And it's not always shots either. There's stick packs. Of course, Can has their roadies. There's all kinds of new technology that, drops, like basically, let's make it easy. Let's make this available, for on the go use.
Next category I think is important and really small, actually, and I think it's going to skyrocket in the years ahead. Not many have jumped into this, and it's spirits. And to me, the first two that we're in, I already mentioned nowadays seltzers, but nowadays started as a spirit. They have a single serve, and they have a traditional liquor bottle looking spirit that is, essentially flavorless, and now they have different flavors. They're rolling out a really nice beverage, Moon. It's spelled MXXN, and Reframe. All of them are very, very nice. They are difficult in terms of in-store and total wine, etc., because the milligrams are so big because they're tall bottles. I expect that space to expand very fast.
Oh, it already is. Like, even the store I went to, they had Artet, they had Pomos, they had a few others that I didn't recognize. Of course, Pomos, I think, is another one of the earlier entrants into the 750
Good
space. I saw Willie Nelson has one. The guys at Bayou City Hemp, they've got one that I think is doing pretty well. And I absolutely see that exploding, and it is such a perfect on-premise play because they don't like housing cans. If there's a draft beer is easy, no, it's not easy, but it's in kegs, and if they can make it so that they can pour it out of a bottle instead of having to house all these cans, that's really more convenient, and that's what bartenders are more accustomed to. We just have to ensure that they know how much per milligram.
That's what I was going to say. And you two at home, when you're experimenting, make sure you read the serving size and measure it out. I know with tequila and gin and bourbon, sometimes you just pour because you know how much you can handle. That is not the case with THC. And those folks at Bayou City Hemp, really smart company. Experimenting, do a lot of different things. I know some of their drinks are on tap, which is really smart. I know Pharos seltzers are also on tap. Another category that is growing, but very, very small, is beer. And they're not beers because you cannot put the word beer on a can. That is not allowed because the perception is it's alcohol. You cannot put alcohol and THC in the same bottle. Not allowed by any state in this country, and I don't expect it ever to be, and I hope it's not, quite frankly. We need to keep these things separate. But there is Float House, which is a Connecticut beer. There is Easy Man, which is made by Go Brewing, which is a non-alcoholic beer. And there's a new one that just got in the game last week. It's called Hail Mary from a longtime NFL star, Micah Hyde. It's a lemon shandy. I'm shocked that this category hasn't grown up faster because I think it's a huge opportunity.
Yeah. The one exception is that non-alcoholic beer is really hard to make. It's very expensive.
Yes.
It's hard. It's expensive. Often you need to pasteurize it for safety purposes. So I could see that would be a harder entry point into the space, with the exception, of course, of some of the breweries that are already currently manufacturing NA. But I do love the concept of it. I have some Easy Man in my fridge and absolutely love the sessionability and the familiarity of it, but without the hangover.
It hits. It
Yeah.
hits quick.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
hits
And
nice.
it's so
Just
chill
to
too.
tell
I
you.
mean, I had their like lime cerveza. I apologize if I'm not saying if I have it wrong, but
Salt and
that
lime, I think. Yeah.
yeah, that in a pool. Oh my God.
It's
Like you the definition of chill mode. Like
Yeah,
it
it
was
is
wonderful.
potentially a real game changer in the industry. And I will say Floathouse tastes exactly like traditional beer. They have an IPA and a traditional and a lager. I'm shocked how much it tastes. The other category, I think the final category would be kind of the functional category, unless you call ready-made cocktails, I guess, are its own category. So it is taking a lot of the shape like alcohol, but functional beverages like Breeze, which by some estimates is the most successful beverage in the space in terms of revenue at this point. And it has all sorts of different adaptogens and different formulas, and some are THC and some are not, and some are mushrooms. Do you have a better sense of how you would describe Breeze to the consumer?
No, I mean I think you did it perfectly. I think what's been great about what they've done is that not only are they exploring the use of other functional ingredients, but they also proliferated their brand in a way that, or bifurcated their brand in that they have a THC line and a non THC line. So now, because they have a non THC line, they have access to retailers that aren't currently selling THC. So they can come in and be a functional offering in the wellness section near your poppies or your
Yes.
olipop and start making a name for themselves in a different space and then create kind of a bridge to help. So I think they've done a really good job and obviously seeing the success and rewards from it.
Yeah, their founder, Aaron, is going to be a guest here on the show coming up. I think probably the smartest operator in this industry right now. No disrespect to anybody else, but the numbers would back that up. And I think the point that you just made, that they're getting access to traditional retailers, that the second this spigot gets turned on in terms of hemp THC, they're already in that space. So all they have to do is add a different SKU, which is a really smart way to play it. But they are clearly spending a lot of money. Again, a lot of brands coming up on the show, including Breeze. And if you want to jump on the show as a brand, please reach out to both Lee and myself. We will bring some samples onto the program. I promised that we would tell our one story about THC that's kind of like something you can look back on and laugh. I think a lot of people have a story like this, Lee, in college or in high school that stopped them from revisiting marijuana today. And I encourage you to give it another try, because weed was so different 25, 30 years ago. We didn't know much about it. It didn't come out of a dispensary. It wasn't regulated. It was really just the wild, wild west. And so one night I smoked way too much out of a bong with some pros in Boulder. And as a future television anchor, I thought I was on all the televisions in this bar, and it freaked me out. And I ran out of this bar, and I couldn't find anywhere to hide from the televisions. And I found an ATM vestibule that I could hide in. I fell asleep in, and apparently a dozen or more friends were on the lookout for me and found me in an ATM vestibule at like 4 o'clock in the morning. I didn't smoke for years after that because it
Oh,
was a
wow.
bad experience, but I have obviously jumped back in. Do you have anything similar?
Well, I do, and I started giggling because you immediately referenced college, and my story actually came from just a few months ago. So it's just kind of wacky. Although I do have a college story that involved like spilling a big can of paint in the middle of the night and freaking out about that. But recently, it's not as extreme as sleeping in a ATM vestibule at 4 a.m. But I was at an event in Chicago, and it was a THC seltzer or THC beverage event, and there was a plethora of product to sample and try, and you don't know how it's going to hit you and all of that. And I found myself just having over consumed, and I ordered an Uber, but then suddenly a handicap van pulled up, and I'm like already kind of having this trippy experience. And then they were asking for codes, and I had to get in. And at one point though, Dave, I was driving around the streets of Chicago convinced that I was being like human trafficked, and that I was going to be taken away. And it was the most peculiar experience. And I got to my hotel room and I didn't leave until the next morning because I was just like, okay, Lee, you've overconsumed. You need a safe space. You're okay. So yeah, mine was just a few months ago, but it was, I think, where my mind went in the experience that it was like, oh no, that's not good. So,
And let me say finally, as we wrap this up and been going about 30 minutes, the good thing is about having too much cannabis. For the most part, it's nothing. A bag of Doritos and a long night of sleep won't cure. There has never been one noted overdose death. And that's one of the reasons I am such a strong proponent of marijuana, of cannabis, of hemp, of THC, is because at worst, you tend to need a lot of sleep or some food. And the downside is just much, much less. And I think in terms of health and wellness, if you had to choose one, and I do drink as well, love tequila and bourbon and gin and you name it, I tend to prefer the health and wellness aspects of THC.
I'd also like to add, Dave, if you do find yourself over consuming THC, you can grab some water soluble CBD and or peppercorn. So those are two ways that you can help kind of recover from overconsumption.
Or for me, Doritos. Cheers to you,
Doritos,
Lee, on
you know?
episode number 2. Some point down the line, we will indulge in the big boys and see what happens to us, just as kind of a word of warning show. But definitely going to start inviting some brands into the show starting next week. Cheers, my friend. Thank you, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.